Welcome to the RSP Film Room. I'm Matt Waldman with the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. We're going to take a look at Travis Etienne, running back out of Clemson. One of the things that I want to point out right away is there's some maturity with his game. You can see here against Ohio State, looks like a pretty straightforward run, big crease, no big deal, right? Well, taking a look at from this angle, get a little bit of an idea of his maturity. Because what you're going to see here at the exchange, you're going to see penetration from number 8 coming across the frame here into the backfield. You also have an unblocked man in 47 who's basically containing the outside. Travis Etienne maybe earlier in his career, and with a lot of young running backs with great athletic ability, would try to bounce the play outside in some fashion or try and make a dramatic move to work well away from the penetration and from the unblocked defender. Instead, he does a good job of pressing the crease a little bit towards that penetration and then making just a quick little slide so that he's going to scrape the back of that penetrator here so that he can get downhill momentum and attack the unblocked defenders here. And as a result, because he's able to scrape that crease so efficiently, scrape the backside of that defender, there's enough space here that he's really not even touched. And the defenders react to to this as well. You're going to see that number 41 takes the angle more to the outside, expecting that's what Etienne's going to do. Etienne just hits that thing inside of 41, does a nice job. Now, if we're going to talk about how good Etienne can be in the NFL, well, part of that comes down to how much he learns to become a master craftsman at the position. Is the potential there for him to do that? Absolutely. But you're going to see on this run that he misses a big crease. And we're going to show you from the angle over here a little bit better as to why that is. Right off the bat during the exchange, he feels that backside penetration coming cleanly into the backfield. One of the things that Etienne does on a regular basis throughout his career that he can refine is that when he spots something like this, he tends to accelerate too soon or too long. And I would say he accelerates too long here. He makes that little move and then dips to the outside, and he's off to the races to this right side, and he gets wrapped for a 5-yard gain. It's still a good gain. Nothing wrong with that on that level. But if we're going to talk about what the best would do, the best are going to know that there's this backside crease here. Huge crease. And that's where he's originally going, but when he sees the defender get that clean penetration off here, he figures, I can't get to this crease anymore. But if he can get down the line here and press inside a little bit faster, but then slow down fast enough to drop his weight and then bounce back to this side, he's going to get at least 5 yards before he has to interact with the linebacker number 20, as opposed to this part of the gain where 5 yards is the maximum he's going to gain. So part of this is understanding, how to be able to defeat this backside defender, but also maintain a position well enough that he can press, scrape, and cut back. This is otherwise known as the "what would Frank Gore do" rule. Because when you watch even a veteran player like Frank Gore, while he may only get 5 yards on this because at this age of his career, he doesn't have the burst and the speed anymore to maybe maximize the space the way that other backs would. But at the same time, at the height of his career, this would be a 25, 30, 35-yard gain easily because he would have cut that back. Etienne also needs work as a pass protector. There's some things that he does really well in terms of being physical. He'll take on bigger defenders from just the raw level of who he'll attack and how he can attack them. There's promise there for him to become an excellent blocker. But one of the problems, besides diagnostic skills of complex blitz schemes that may cause adjustments with his offensive line and making sure that Etienne's on the same page, is also his tendency to try and just blow up defenders and drop his head like this into the interaction. Once you've dropped your head in the interaction like that, you're giving the defender an opportunity to be able to bounce off that contact because there's minimal ability for the running back at this point to redirect or to be able to sustain any type of contact that he makes, because he's not seeing what he's hitting and he's not seeing where the defender is going. So when he blows it up like that, you can see how his body was turned too, because he turns his head in that direction. His body's going to follow. So he turns his head, his body follows in that direction. The defender's able to just slide off of that, and there he is getting pressure on Trevor Lawrence. And that should have been intercepted. And that play is largely on Etienne for creating the pressure. Certainly Lawrence has his own responsibility for this. But if Etienne picks this up, this is going to be a cleaner throw. And it's not a wounded duck. I saw this multiple times against Ohio State. I see this in other games. Here's one against Notre Dame. You're going to see Etienne here work against the linebacker, number 35. And he does what I would call like kind of a standing cut block. He wants to work across the defender, cut high at the hips here, and shoot through. Now, he drops his head, can't see where he's hitting. He does time it well. He does try to shoot across the frame and through the body. But when you shoot across the frame and you do it from the wrong angle, that opens up a lot of area for the defender to be able to work around him. And when you drop your head and you telegraph what you're doing, the defender can use that underhand technique to kind of just slide off and swat past Etienne. And if this weren't a quick hitting pass, he's going to get pressure on Trevor Lawrence. So while this was a good enough block for the situation, because it turned out to be a quick hitting play, if this first read isn't thrown, 35 is going to have pressure on Trevor Lawrence. And I've seen the quarterback pressured due to this type of lackluster technique from Etienne as a blocker. Here's a good decision by Etienne here in the red zone against Virginia Tech. You're going to see two pullers from the backside here work to the front side, and there's penetration by number 5 at Virginia Tech here. And you see that Etienne does a good job of reading that penetration during the exchange. And instead of trying to go for the cutback right away, though that might not have been a bad idea in this situation, in theory, what I like is that he continues to try to follow the play, not just look immediately for that cutback. And as you can see it developing, if he tries to make the turn here, 23, though he's on the ground here, might be able to get back up and cut this off. So I like the fact that as he continues downhill, he gets inside or underneath that penetration, follows his second pulling blocker, realizes that this is all cut off, and he's pressed enough at this point that he knows he should find a cutback. And that's where he makes his cutback attempt. Now, he only gains a yard on the play. He gets wrapped by the defensive tackle. But again, this just gives you an idea that from the standpoint of process here, yes, maybe he winds up in a better situation with an immediate cutback right here, and you'd like to see him at least look over here, especially pre-snap. Look at the situation and think, okay, where are most of my defenders going to be at the snap? And you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4 of them at the very least are going to be at the side where the play's flowing towards. And number 5 makes him the 5th man right there. At this point, maybe you should be looking cutback right away. But I think that if you're going to follow the design of the play first, you make the most of it for all you can, and then you make your cutback. And he does this here. He makes do with this penetration, still has a puller to this edge, decides he's going to try and press that. Nothing there. Then he goes for the cutback. Doesn't get too wild here. While it's only a yard gain, he doesn't, he could have lost more with a more erratic decision. Here's another decisive run that's indicative of a good NFL prospect at running back. You're going to see him here work towards that double team up to the linebacker, number 33. There's going to be outside penetration coming down the line here. And you see that none of that disturbs him in terms of the penetration and, off of the tackle or outside the tackle or actually from the inside here. He's just going to hit this small crease. He's going to anticipate it to open. He's going to make the best of what he can here. Nice little jab, setting up the block to the inside, and then slides between his guard and tackle right there. He gets a strong gain on this play. And this is what you want to see from a young back, because the big plays, certainly, if you've got the speed to do it in the NFL, You're going to have lots of big plays in college, but those don't impress me as much as tight crease runs. The decision making here to be able to stay on course when there's a triangle or even a box of defenders who could threaten you here, and with younger backs often take them off course of what they should be focused on. But he's focused on the crease, slides through it. Nice gain. Similar idea here in the red zone for a touchdown. You're going to see 41, the defensive tackle, basically shed his man into the crease here. Etienne does a great job of just dropping his pads, attacking first, getting his pads into the defender. He's the one making the first hit here. He gets wrapped a little bit here around the horse collar a bit, but he's able to shake loose of that because he's the first one to make contact. So he turns this really into a reach by the defender and just pulls through it. So being the aggressor, hitting that crease at top speed and committing to it. That's what you want to see. Not a big and strong back, but big enough and certainly technically sound enough to maximize his momentum and reduce his surface level. And when you do that, you can beat front line defenders. One of the things that really works in Etienne's favor as a running back is his comfort with tight creases. You're going to see here, this isn't a huge gain, but it's a solid play. And these are the types of creases he's going to see in the NFL, where it looks like where he wants to go is about to get filled. But he understands that he has his blocker slanting inside to take that. But still he presses it to that outside shoulder, cuts back downhill, hurdles the legs of his blocker, takes a wrap by a defensive lineman, and is able to continue forward. But he doesn't hesitate. There are a lot of backs that in this situation, they see this and they're going to try and bounce it to the outside, to the left or the right. Darren McFadden was a great example of a back who would do this. Former Clemson back C.J. Spiller often lacked the discipline or the ability to read the field and really attack tight creases and be comfortable with them. But you can see here that Etienne does a good job of having faith in where that crease is supposed to be based on the blocking scheme, based on the slanting off the double team of his right guard, slanting to the inside, and then making that late dip, and then hurdling over and getting the yards. Here's another nice run by Etienne. You're going to see it here in the fourth quarter. Watch the development of this crease because he just stays with this. You got the double team here. You can see the free defender, at least that 62 is going to come and slide over to. And he's taking this all in. He's reading the leverage, and he sees that he's hoping that 79 and 65 will open a crease up the middle here, or there'll be a crease between the 62 and 65. Does a good job of getting downhill, pressing towards 88's outside shoulder. That sucks the outside defender in, and there's the crease opening up. And he doesn't even go through that one. He actually goes through the one between 88 and 79. Gets a nice gain out of that. That's just excellent patience. And just understanding to stay with the play. It's these plays because, yes, he's going to have 50, 60, 70-yard runs during his career if he has a good career in the NFL. But what's going to keep him on the field and make him a potential every down back will be his ability to get these types of gains and not lose yards or make dumb mistakes. This is a mature run. And when Etienne can get to the second level, he loves the spin move. You're going to see here a nice little tight crease play. He's going to work downhill. And while the crease doesn't look too tight at this point, he's able to work through a reach here by a defensive tackle. Not much of one, but still be able to squeeze through here. Bounce off. Another reach by a safety. And here comes the spin against the other safety, or the running back here, or excuse me, the linebacker. Spins through that. Open grass. Spin move's a little predictable in terms of his play. This is like his go-to move is the spin whenever anyone reaches for him or gets an angle on him. One of the best things that Etienne does is run the gap scheme because he's decisive. He'll hit small creases. He has momentum generated power, but he also can spot the rare cutback on a gap play. There he is following the two pullers to the right side. He reads the leverage on the outside here, sees that there's 3-on-2, the advantage to the defense. He starts to slide it back to the inside here. And as he does, he's now reading the leverage of the defenders in the middle of the field and where they should be at the backside, but they're not at the backside. So it leaves that backside open, and he does a good job of sliding outside there. And while the defensive tackle is able to make the wrap, he gains 4 yards on a play that easily could have been stopped for a no-gainer here. Etienne's also doing a good job of reading the box here. You're going to see here pre-snap, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 players, including the center, and then a 5th if you're going to count Etienne, against 2 defensive tackles and 2 linebackers. So you got a 4-on-5 here, and you could even count the quarterback as a 6, so 6-on-4. And if you count the safety, it's still 6-on-5 advantage for Clemson. As a result of this, he knows what he wants to do. He wants to get these defenders to flow downhill towards the right side, and he does that, pressing a couple of steps, and then makes the quick bounce to the outside, or cut back to the outside, gets a positive gain. So when you combine Etienne's ability to get downhill and squeeze through tight creases with his ability to bounce plays outside, you have something here. Obviously, you get 31 filling that crease there that he wanted to head towards. Off of that double team, it's filled too early. He knows he can't get there. He opens his hips right there, points the toe, needs to get outside. Here's number 11, the safety, coming downhill. Good job here, opening the toe, pointing it to the outside, opening the hips. Stiff arm, well placed to the reach, pulling away that. Gets outside. Nice game. One of the more notable concerns with Travis Etienne's game that's developed this year is fumbles. Last week, or against Notre Dame, there was a fumble where they ran a toss play and he caught the toss but then looked at the oncoming penetration and ended up dropping the ball and fumbled it away. Here's a straight up handoff with number 5 giving him the ball, and somehow either the ball arrives a little bit high on the chest or Etienne just never controls it, and there's the ball flying out as I circle it right there, just to the right of his helmet. This is a 99-yard reversal, essentially, and a touchdown that should have been Clemson touchdown. Now, Etienne, before 2019, had a near all-star level ball security rate. Between 2019 and 2020, more kind of a committee level. Now, 2 of these 4 fumbles for the year have been exchange problems that I've seen thus far. So that mitigates it a little bit. But knowing his ball security anyhow, it can be improved even if his rate hasn't been so bad prior to this season. He carries the ball high but rocks the ball up and down with his gait, so it's a little bit more prone to slaps to the ball and knocking it loose. And his elbow tends to be wide from his frame when he's carrying the ball normally, not just in this situation where the exchange was off. The obvious thing about Travis Etienne's game, he's a game breaker. You can see this. If you don't contain the edge, which is what happens here, you've got a defensive lineman, you've got a linebacker trying to chase in pursuit around the corner, far side edge. With the amount of acceleration that he gets, and with a lot of the defenders focused on the running ability of Trevor Lawrence, you can see right here, he gets downhill, and not even a cornerback is going to be able to chase him down even from the same side of the field, especially if he's blocked up earlier in the play. 44 yards. Here's another nice example of Etienne pressing a crease. You're going to see him work from his left to his right. There's the double team on number 40. And he doesn't take that right there. Instead, he heads downhill and he sees 35 on his near side tackle. He does a good job taking a little bit of a step to the inside and then working back outside of 35. Let's look at it one more time here. A little step inside, back outside. That press is enough to get 35 to maintain his position to that outside long enough that he can't even reach for him. Overall, I think Travis Etienne made a good decision to stay in school in 2020 because despite the hype that he got in 2019, he had some issues with being patient between the tackles and making mature decisions not to try and bounce so many plays outside or cut back on plays that made no sense to do so. So I look forward to seeing him in the NFL. I think while I don't think he's the next Alvin Kamara, he certainly has the opportunity to be a big play weapon who can do work between the tackles in the right scheme. I think a gap-oriented scheme or a team with a lot of gap could really be a great fit for him. Thanks again for watching. For more RSP Film Room videos, you can check out my YouTube channel, Matt Waldman's RSP Film Room, and my site, www.mattwaldmanrsp.com.